Okay. So I wanted to get started asking about the development of the film. What was the inspiration in making the project and getting the short together?
Yeah, so should I start?
Maybe you can start, yeah.
Yeah. I'm the director, and this is Hanna, the writer. And I think the inspiration to start this film was that I saw Hanna perform the poem during a festival in 2020. And I just thought it was really visual and strong, and both like confrontational and humble, and it had this very nice balance. And I feel like the question of housing is a topic that's very relevant to our generation, and as we've come to understand, like a hot potato internationally as well, because Norway has a very privatized housing market. So I could, even though I didn't grow up in social housing like Hannah did, I felt like I could relate to the story of um, just sort of painting a picture of what a home is. And I really wanted to bring that to the screen. And yeah, so I contacted you, and we sort of started idea throwing ideas back and forth. And it was also during the pandemic, so we had a little bit of extra time, you can say, to develop the film and really think things through. And yeah, I don't know. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe perhaps I can talk about how the poem started in a way. So I was just exploring childhood memories, really, and it's actually different poems that after a while became one, because I saw there were kind of this red line between them. And yeah, so it ended up being a story, true story, but about not just like housing and the politics of housing in Norway, but also the question about what a home is and what kind of limitations there are in creating a home and understanding a place as a home. My background is in human geography as well, so I've also had this academic interest in gentrification and homes and so on as well. And it's been very fun and humbling as well to understand the question of home and housing from a different perspective as well. It's my first film project. It's been lovely to work with Signe. So yeah, I wouldn't say we're just colleagues anymore, but friends as well.
Yeah.
And we're also really looking forward to continuing this work relationship. Yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
While you were making the film, did you find it to be important to include like some of your poetry in it, or was that something that you always were interested in including in the film? And what was that experience like in incorporating your background into the story as well?
that was kind of a decision that you did actually.
Yeah, sorry, just to understand your question, like including your
The poetry.
the
yeah,
poetry.
film,
Oh yeah,
as a
yeah,
part
yeah.
of the film.
Yeah,
That was kind of something you
Yeah.
wanted to.
Yeah, because I saw Hannah perform it. It's not the same experience when you just read it on a paper. And Hannah's a very good performer. And for me, it was really important to sort of bring the performance into the film. And I felt the poetry itself, it's a beautiful text. And it gave us a lot of room for creativity, because what Hannah is doing in the film through the poem is telling the story, literally telling the story. And in that sense, we had a much larger space to sort of bounce around creatively, because the audience didn't need to understand necessarily. You know, when you work on a film, you edit from like person looking that way to door opening to, you have to sort of explain a lot of things while making films usually. But when working with this poem, we didn't need to do that in the same way. And it was a lot of fun working with these miniatures and working more with like symbolism and using like a suggestive production design that doesn't claim to know what this place looked like, but that sort of suggests an atmosphere and gives the audience a chance to sort of reflect on the life that has been lived there, because it's also a story of the past. It's not something that's happening now. So we wanted to sort of play with the past and the present in the images while Hanna was sort of telling her story. So the poem was very important for the film. It was kind of the framework for the whole thing, I would say. Yeah.
And speaking about the miniatures and the production design, what was that experience like as well, and creating the look of the miniatures and really reflecting how your childhood home looked as well?
Yeah, we worked with an amazing production designer. Her name is Julia Jacob Fosland. And I think she was the one, because the building Hanna grew up in, it's in Oslo, but it was under construction while we worked on this project. So she came up with the idea of making like miniatures. And we worked in the beginning. I have a background in journalism. So in the beginning, I really wanted it to look exactly like what it had looked like. But then we sort of found our way through also not just the rooms, but also the props. You could see like there's this little dog and there's this dress. And then we have Hannah's childhood photos and a specific type of like shoes that children in Norway wore in the 90s. It was very like a thing that 90s kids remember from Norway. So we worked with a lot of, nostalgic details that could somehow make people relate to this, even though it wasn't their home. There's always something in that home that they also had in their home, and in that sense sort of opened the universe a bit. And yeah, so the miniatures are made of papier-mâché. I don't know what it's called in.
I'm not sure what it's called either.
It's quite simple miniatures built in a studio, and Julia did an amazing job in.
Yeah, she was on set every day with
yeah,
like a glue gun,
Yeah.
always mixing stuff and
Yeah, like painting, fixing
little vistas.
yeah. So, and we worked with a great gaffer, Leander. He did the lights, and a cinematographer, Sophia. So we had a really good team that sort of experimented along the way, and it gave us a lot of room to play with this universe, sort of.
And also the fact that the poem is also based on well, there's some factual about it as well, especially at the end when we get into the facts about what happened later on, and also in the beginning, like how many apartments there were and so on. But at the end of the day, it's also a poem based on childhood memories.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of revisiting these memories, things that happened when I was like 4 or 5 years ago, and also had some help from my older sister, who remember things a bit more to detail than I did. But it's still based on a child's memory in a way. So we had to take that into account as well. Yeah. Like, how did I remember it? And perhaps the dimensions that doesn't make any sense, or perhaps maybe the candy was different. Maybe it wasn't actually that specific ice cream. It is a documentary, but it's also about how we can have access to something that doesn't exist anymore. And how can we create that into like a visual perspective as well. Also when like it was so strange, because the building had been the same for 2 decades, and exactly when we want to start shooting, and as you said, they started like they started building a new apartment block in the middle where the playground used to be, and they also changed the facade of it. So it's like, oh my god, right now, why? So of course we had to do something different, but it was also about how to kind of understand it from the perspective of a kid.
So it's very much a child's perspective, and then sort of later growing up looking back. So we're kind of playing with that in the dramaturgy. And it has this dollhouse feeling, especially after like going into the film. You see that Hanna is there, she's looking into the windows and like picking things up, moving things around. And we really wanted to, or I really wanted to do that, to sort of emphasize the fact that this is Hanna's story. It's not the story of all the people who lived there. This is her sort of interpretation of your own memories and
Yeah,
trying to
understanding of
so it's a very like hybrid, there's a lot of hybrid layers, but we thought yeah, we're quite happy with them, I think. Yeah.
And speaking about the cinematography as well and the lighting, like you mentioned earlier, I was about to also ask about that experience as well, and really figuring out how you wanted to visually shoot the film. What was that experience like working with the cinematographer, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so the film is shot by a good friend of mine. She's a Danish cinematographer called Sofie Søberg. And we hadn't worked together prior, but I knew her work, and she has a lot of room for details. She has a very good eye looking at like different she works a little bit differently, I would say, more in the more like artistic direction than commercial, big, large pictures. Everything was shot in a studio, which was really nice because it was so controlled and we could move the miniatures easily. They were light to carry, and you don't need much light either to sort of highlight the different details in a miniature. So Sophia and Leander, who did the lights, did an amazing job in constructing this feeling of, life within in the miniatures. And we also worked a lot with movement. Like in almost every image, there's a tiny bit of movement to sort of create that feeling of a vibrant apartment building instead of just, an empty room, because that was really a challenge bringing, the audience into this. We needed something that made it feel alive. And yeah, so they did a great job, both Sophia and Leander, in the cinematography, I would say. Yeah.
Also, I wanted to ask about, like you mentioned earlier as well, and putting the film together and editing, and what was that experience like, and really figuring out what you wanted the final version?
Editing was really hard actually, because there was no real sound. You can just imagine having all these beautiful images, or Hanna was in the images and she sometimes talked,
but often not.
Yeah, it was a lot of looking, moving back, forward. And so the editing process was quite tedious because we couldn't really feel it. So I would say the sound design was really important to sort of make the film come alive. And therefore we did this parallel process where our sound designers came with sort of suggestions of what a different room could sound like, or what would be the development in the sound and the music. And we used that quite actively in editing to sort of make it all, to be able to experience it as a film and not just a set of quiet images. And yeah, and then we have some tiny VFX in the small television screens. When that came on, it also gave it like the extra layer of, and like working with transitions and stuff like that. So it was quite a puzzle to piece together, but yeah, we're really happy with it. Yeah.
Also, what was the experience like producing the film as well, and really getting the project going in terms of producing it?
Yeah, so this is a low budget film, and I also produced it, and it was financed by, in Norway, we mostly have public funding, different kinds of public funding. And we were financed through the regional film centers and like some private, we have something called the Free Speech Foundation that sort of supports projects. And the low budget thing is, it's both a pro and a con. You can't do everything you want, but it also gives you a lot of freedom because there's less expectations. You don't have the pressure from the Film Institute or like people who have directions they think are good for the film. So we really made it on our own premises. Do you say that?
Yeah. Premises, yeah.
It was very much like we did what we wanted to do and we trusted our own process. And that was really nice. So it was a very fun film to produce, I would say, because we were such a good team and everyone delivered when they had to. And then we were super tired afterwards because, we had so little time, so little money. So it was very much like a team effort to make it happen. And yeah, no, but I
It's
really
also work with passion.
yeah,
I'd
really,
say.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a passion project for everyone. Yeah.
And now with the film going out to the different festivals, what has that experience been like for you both as well, and being able to share the movie with audiences at the festival, especially like with Atlanta, and what was that experience like of getting to go there and share it with audiences there?
Yeah, I can start that. We've been to quite a few North American festivals. We started with Doc NYC in November, October.
Yeah.
Hanna was there. I wasn't. Julia was there, the production designer. And yeah, do you want to like say a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I find really interesting about personal storytelling as well. That it's not really necessarily private or personal. It's the question of gentrification, for instance. We don't need to talk about what gentrification is. We don't need to define that in the context of New York, for instance, or even here in Toronto.
Yeah.
People know it. People know of it. People have lived it. So it's been really interesting in kind of contributing in an understanding that it is a global problem in a way. Norway is a small country. Oslo is a small capital, but there are still like full lives being lived there. And for many of those lives, gentrification and the loss of a home is part of that. And as sad as it is, that's also something that people can connect over. The question of home and how to create that. So, and also the obstacles that are limiting our ways of doing a home or having a home. So it's been really, what do you say, teachable, like a learning experience as well, but also very very touching to have conversations with people that see themselves in the film as well, or family members or friends or their entire city. And it's also been very surprising for me that like people want to show this film. Because again, I had no of course I trusted in you, but like I had no expectations coming into this. I was like, oh, this will be a fun project. Like, okay, maybe sometimes I can show the film instead of performing the poem. But I had no expectations of like showing it outside of our little tiny home in Norway. Like it's very
it's been great. Like at least the American reception we've been to. I went to Utah to Slam Dance in January. That was also great. And now we're here in Toronto. We didn't manage to go to Atlanta, sadly, so we didn't know how the reception has been, but we heard it's a great festival, and our program was very nicely curated. And it's also been screening in some smaller festivals in the US. And so we're quite overwhelmed with this attention, but I also feel like it's kind of hit a tiny nerve when it comes to the question of housing, and also in the form that it's not like a classic documentary. It's a little bit different, and in that sense I think we kind of hit a nerve. So that's been really great, and it's been really great to sort of have Hanna along. I've made documentaries before with much larger budgets than this, but it's also been very great to have Hanna along as a writer and as a person who travels with the film. Also, Julia, the production designer, has been very actively traveling with the film, and so it's been different than just traveling alone as a director, trying to be represent this work, and it feels nice to do this as like a collective experience. Because Hanna knows a lot more about housing policies than I do, because I don't have a bachelor's degree in.
And you know a lot more about industry than I do, because
so it's been really nice, and we had a great screening at Hot Dogs Canadian premiere yesterday. It was a full room with a great audience, great program. Yeah, so it's been really, really good so far. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I've been covering the Atlanta Film Festival this year virtually from
Ah.
here in New York. Yeah, I was able to go to it last year and enjoyed it. So I'm covering it again this year, and I was able to go to Slam Dance in person in January as well. So that was a
You
fun
were
one as
there?
well. Yeah, so yeah, I was covering a few different films there as well. So
Yeah, nice.
unfortunately I missed this one there, but I was happy that we could connect now about it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I think that was mainly it, but thank you both again for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And there were great
You're welcome.
questions as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
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 Bye.